Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video we've got a couple of things to discuss as we continue our season preview series. Today we're going to be talking about the Seattle Kraken and the Edmonton Oilers. How they do to finish out the 22-23 season, how they do this offseason, and how are they shaping up going into the 23-24 season. Definitely. We'll check all of that out coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the N10 Hockey Channel. Now, as usual, we're going to be doing another season preview series. Today we're going to be talking about two Pacific Division teams in the Seattle Kraken and the Edmonton Oilers. So, as usual, we're going to start off by discussing how they finished the 22-23 season. We're going to look at their additions and losses of the offseason. We're going to look at their top three picks in the 2023 draft. I'm going to give you my projected lineup for the 23-24 season, and I'm also going to give you my projected point total for 23-24 season, as well as giving you my offseason grade for both of these teams. So we're going to start here with the Seattle Kraken, who I think surprised a ton of people as they went from their inaugural season finishing as a low-end team to getting 40 more points in their second season and making the playoffs as a wildcard team, finishing with a 46-28-8 record for 100 points, and were able to make the playoffs as a wildcard team, number one in the West. They finished fourth in the Pacific, seventh in the Western Conference. The Kraken would go to Colorado in the first round. They would dig themselves into a 1-0 hole. Then they would win the next two to go up 2-1. Then they would lose the next two to go up 3-2. And that would be followed by Avs winning Game 6 to tie up the series, before the Kraken would be able to go to Colorado, win 2-1 in a nail-biter in Game 7, and take down the Avalanche in 7 games for their first ever series win in their history. So they definitely had a fantastic playoffs. They would go to the second round to face the Dallas Stars. They would go up 1-0 and 2-1 in that series. Then they would go down 3-2 by losing games 4 and 5. They would win Game 6 to force a Game 7, but then they would once again be really close to another nail-biter Game 7 again. The Seattle Kraken wound up losing to the Dallas Stars 2-1. So it was a really close game, but the Kraken wound up losing to the Dallas Stars. So once again, really close, really good, but a fantastic second season for the Seattle Kraken. They improve by making the playoffs, and they win a round. So I think all in all, everyone can say Seattle had a fantastic, surprising season, and they're going to be looking to build off of that. So went to the offseason this year looking for some improvements, trying to get a little bit more dangerous, and try to show that they're still a really good team to be competing. So if you look at the offseason additions and losses here, if you look at the losses category, they lost Jonas Donskoy, who did not play at all last year. He retired. They also lost Daniel Sprong, who was a fantastic fourth-line forward. He went to Detroit via free agency. They also lost Morgan Geekie to the Boston Bruins in free agency. They lost Ryan Donato to the Chicago Blackhawks in free agency. They lost Carson Twarynski, who's a UFA right now. They lost Carson Seuss, who went to Vancouver in free agency. And they lost Martin Jones, who went to Toronto in free agency. So definitely a couple of losses there. Some pretty big ones there too. The additions were not too bad. They added Kailer Yamamoto in free agency. They added Pierre-Edouard Bellemare as a depth forward. They had Devin Shore as a depth forward. They had Marian Studnik as a depth forward. And they also bring in Brian Doolin, who's a solid top four defenseman, and Connor Carrick, who's a decent depth defenseman. So in my eyes, some really good additions there. You get Dumoulin to replace Seuss. You get Bellemare, Shore, Yamamoto to replace guys like Sprong, Geekie, Donskoy, Donato. So all in all, decent ins and outs for the Kraken. They lost a couple of guys, they gained a couple of guys. All in all, I think this Kraken roster is still pretty good. So even though the list of the additions and subtractions are short, I think it was a pretty good offseason for the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken top three picks in the 2023 draft. Definitely had a couple of draft selections. The first round, 20th overall, they selected Edward Chalet, who should be eventually a good middle six forward. The second round, number 18 overall, they added left winger Raykopf, who should once again be eventually really good like third line forward. And 20th overall in the second round, they selected Oscar Fisker Molgaard, who should eventually once again be a good middle six forward. So really, some good additions there from the Kraken, and I think they definitely really did well this offseason, getting some picks in the draft. So all in all, I think that was a really good offseason with their additions, losses, and the players who they picked in the draft had a lot of draft capital and used it well. So really good there for the Kraken. My current projected lineup for the 23-24 season, I have Jared McCann playing on the top line with Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle. I have Alex Burakovsky playing on the second line with Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand. I have this third line being Jayne Schwartz with Shane Wright and Eli Tolvanen. And I have the fourth line being Brandon Tanev with Alex Wenberg and Kailer Yamamoto. So a fantastically set up forward line for the Seattle Kraken. I also have the defensive pairings being Dunn Larson on the first pair, Dumoulin Schultz on the second pair, and then Borgren with Oleksiak on the third pair. So a decent defense. I also have Grubauer being the 1A, the Cord being the 1B, and then I have their spares being Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Cole Lind, and Kel Fleury. So that'll be a cap-compliant roster. So definitely, the forward group looks fantastic. The defense still looks a little bit weak. If Grubauer can continue his play from the playoffs, this Kraken team should be fantastic next year. So in my eyes, that's a really good team. My current projected point total for 23-24 season for the Kraken, I have them finishing with a record of 48-25-9 for 105 points, and then finishing third in the Pacific and fifth in the Western Conference. 5 more points than they had last year. So I have them being a little bit better. I have them being ahead of the LA Kings. Some people might say it's a flip. It might very well be a flip. But in my eyes, I see the Kraken being a slight bit better than the Kings. And I have them being a C+ this year. It was not a fantastic offseason. They got on Dumoulin to replace Seuss. They got Yamamoto to replace a guy like Daniel Sprong. They got a couple of depth guys like Shore and Bellemare to replace guys like Geeky, Donato. So not a fantastic in and out situation, but they do have a couple of good young players. They definitely had a really good draft. So in my eyes, they had a fantastic offseason, but still pretty mediocre. I was expecting them to make a big move, improving that forward group even more. Maybe improving that defense. They were in on guys like DeBrincat and Carlson to get some more offense in that lineup, but they were not able to get one. So I think if they had got one of those, they would probably be like a B rating. But in my eyes, with the way that this offseason went for them, I'll give them a C+. So a really good offseason for a Kraken, and I expect them to continue to improve next year and hit 105 points. And next we'll go over to the Edmonton Oilers, who had a fantastic season last year, finishing with a 50-23-9 record for 109 points, second in the Pacific and the Western Conference. So definitely, they were really good, only behind the Golden Knights. They would start the first round series down 1-0 and 2-1 in the series to the LA Kings before winning game 3, 4, 5, and 6 to win the series over LA in 6. They would advance to the second round against those Golden Knights. They would go up 1-0 and 2-1 in the series before losing game 4, 5, and 6 to go down the series to the Golden Knights in 6 games and lose in the second round. So Knights win over the Oilers in the second round. It was a really bad loss for the Oilers, and they were definitely beating themselves up as to they were probably the favorites to go on to the Stanley Cup final and win had they beat the Golden Knights. So definitely was really bad for the Edmonton Oilers to lose at that point, as they had so much confidence in that team being a Stanley Cup contender. But they did wind up losing. So if you look at the offseason losses and additions here, how did this offseason as they look to improve and get back into the playoffs? They didn't really do much, as they didn't really have enough cap space to do anything. They lose Nick Bukestad, who was a good bottom 6 forward, Kailer Yamamoto, who was a decent middle 6 forward but too expensive to keep. They lose Devin Shores, a bottom 6 forward, to Seattle, Yamamoto to Seattle, Bukestad to Arizona. They lose Tyler Benson, who's currently UFA right now. They lose Klim Kostin, who they trade to Detroit. They lose Ryan Murray, who's UFA, and they lose Slater Kuku, who's UFA on the defensive end. So not fantastic losses, but their additions are even smaller. They had Drake Caggiula, Lane Peterson, decent bottom 6 forwards, and Connor Brown, who paired with his junior teammate Connor McDavid, should hopefully help the Oilers to be a little bit more offensive this year. But besides that, they really didn't do anything else. They're just the 3 additions. So in my eyes, they did all right with the cap space they had, but that was not a very productive offseason by any means. I mean, Brown should definitely be a really good addition. They got a little more depth with Caggiula and Peterson, but their defense didn't improve. Their goaltending's still the same. And they did lose a little bit of depth on the forward group. So, in my eyes, they still had a pretty good offseason. If I look at their top 3 picks in the 2023 draft, they only had 3 picks in the 2023 draft. Second round, theirs, number 24th overall, they took Boo Aki. 6th round, number 24 overall, they took goaltender Day. And 7th round, number 24th overall, they took center Kopanen. So, they had an alright draft. I think the Aki pick was fantastic. The depth additions were pretty good. But really, they didn't have any draft capital to use. So I think they did all right with the 3 picks they had, but I can't say they had a fantastic draft day because they didn't really have that much draft capital. So really, a decent draft from the Oilers. My current projected 23-24 lineup for the Edmonton Oilers, I have Evander Kane playing on the top line with Connor McDavid and Connor Brown. I have Leon Draisaitl playing on the second line with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Zach Hyman. On the third line, I have Dylan Holloway playing with Ryan McLeod and Warren Foegele. On the fourth line, I have Matthias Janmark with Derek Ryan and Raphael Lavoie. I have Matthias Ekholm playing with Evan Bouchard. I have Darnell Nurse playing with Cody Ceci, and I have Brett Kulak playing with Vinny Desharnais. I have Skinner as the 1A goalie, Campbell as the 1B goalie, then I have Lane Peterson as the 1 spare, and that will be a cap-compliant roster. So in my eyes, it's a decent roster for the Oilers. Once again, their top 9 still looks stacked. They still have a very good forward group. Their defense looks a little bit weaker than it was last year, but not by much. And they still have a decent goaltending tandem, but Campbell's going to be a huge X factor. If he can do well this year, I think the Oilers should definitely be a really good team. So, in my eyes, my current projected point total for the 23-24 season for the Edmonton Oilers, I have them finishing with a record of 52, 21, and 9 for 113 points. I have them finishing first in the Pacific, second in the Western Conference. 4 more points than they had last year. So I have them doing really well this year. I think they'll go ahead of Vegas and finish ahead of Vegas in the Pacific Division. I think they'll win the Pacific Division this year. Not sure how far they'll go in the playoffs. They are still a really good team though. So I would not be surprised if they went really, really deep. So definitely, I do like the additions they made. They did not lose an overabundance of stuff. I think they did fantastic. I think they had a decent offseason, so I'm going to give them a B- in the offseason category. Not fantastic, but I think the addition of Connor Brown will definitely help them. They got a couple of decent depth additions. They did lose a little bit of depth, but I think they should definitely be able to make do. So, in my eyes, the addition of Brown would definitely be giving this team a B-. They also didn't do fantastic in the drafting, but I think they did all right. So, in my eyes, they get a B-. They have a decent draft. They had a okay offseason, and in my eyes, were pretty mediocre. So definitely a fantastic offseason for the Oilers and also the Kraken. I think both teams improved this year. I'm going to expect both teams to finish with marginal more points than they did last year. So definitely love to hear your thoughts down in the comments on what you think about these two teams. Do you think the Oilers were in a B- rating? Do you think the Kraken were in a C+ rating? Do you think that both these teams are going to be top 3 teams in the Pacific Division next year? Do you think they'll both hit over 100? Do you think Edmonton really has improved that much this year? Do you see Seattle being a little bit better than LA this year? Definitely love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so definitely check that out. We have a link to that in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.